Well, I did my work in Mississippi. I was going home on Friday night. How many of you have been on those Friday night airplane rides? Friday night? Headed back to Detroit. It's late. By the time I catch the flight, you have to go. I had to fly from Jackson to Atlanta, catch a different flight, fly from Atlanta up to Detroit. By the time I'm on this Atlanta to Detroit flight, it's late. There's a quiet energy on those late Friday night flights. Everybody's a little tired. And there's a thing called regular protocol for airplane flights. This person seated next to you, we have a little short conversation just to be social. What do you do for a living? Do you have a family? Fine, thanks. Now don't tell me anymore so I can sit quietly and read my book or relax and have my little quiet time. And on Friday night, it is especially necessary for most people just to have that little quiet time. There was a very lovely lady seated next to me. She's about 45, 50 years old. She runs a big company. She runs a company with a couple hundred employees. She's very accomplished, very lovely, very articulate. We have a little airplane conversation. Here's what I do for a living. I have a family. Here's what you do for a living. You have a family. And then we settled into our seats and the plane took off. It was nice and dark and quiet. After a little while, I was feeling good. I turned on the light. I was going to read my book. And then as I turned on the light, I looked next to me. And there's tears coming down her face. And she turns to me and she says, "Bob, you work with kids and families?" I said, "Yeah." "Can we talk about my 21-year-old boy? I'm really worried about him." There's a part of me right now that's saying, "Oh, crap. I was hoping for that nice quiet ride. Not going to happen now." I'm going to hear another one of those stories. I've heard a bunch of them on the airplanes over the years. Here's what she told me. She told me about her 21-year-old son. She really loves this kid. Loves him like life itself. When he was little, when he was in elementary school, he just didn't seem that motivated as a learner. And so it was kind of hard to get him to do things like homework and pay attention and read. And so she pretty much every night sat down with him to try to help him with his homework. And really, he wasn't very motivated. So lots of nights she ended up kind of doing it for him. And as time went along, she sort of started doing even more for him. By the time he got to middle school, he was just kind of lazy, in her words, and she did a lot of his papers and a lot of his assignments for him. And sometimes she didn't even make him sit with her while she was doing that work. He wandered off and go and played with games and electronic and digital toys and things of that kind. By the time he got to high school, he got in trouble with the school a couple of times, but they came in and they straightened out those school people. They weren't going to let their son get punished by those school people. And then there was that one little drug thing, but they hired him a good lawyer and they got him out of that. They weren't going to be hurting her son. By the time he finally graduated from high school with a whole lot of help from his mother, getting his assignments done, writing his papers, helping him stay organized. By the time he finally graduated from high school with a very low grade point average, did you know that you can get into a college or university, especially some of these ones that have high tuition and really need students? Did you know that you can get into some of these colleges even with a fairly low grade point average if you're willing to pay a lot of tuition money? And they found one of those colleges. By now, he's never had a real job. He never even worked in the summer to help pay for part of his college or anything like that. He has a wonderful cell phone. He has a wonderful brand new lease car that mommy and daddy are paying for. He has every electronic gaming system and toy and device known to mankind. And he goes off to this little college. Mom, because she loves him so much, has his schedule in her planner. And 45 minutes before every one of his classes, because she loves him desperately, she calls him up just to remind him or wake him up or remind him to make sure to get his assignments and take him to class. 45 minutes before every class, she calls him up because she loves him so much. She tells him she'd like to come up and visit. Dad and I want to come up and visit you on the weekend. He says, no. Things are fine. College life is good, but I got a lot of work to do this weekend, so it probably shouldn't come up, he keeps telling his mom. Well, did you know that in some of these colleges, There's a regular curriculum. Those are the courses and classes that you sign up for. And then there's another thing called the alternative curriculum. Does anybody here know from personal or from somebody else's experience about the alternative curriculum that's available at most colleges? Anybody heard about this? It's called sex, drugs, and video games. He signed up for the alternative curriculum, and apparently it was a lot more interesting to him than the standard curriculum because he stopped going to those regular classes because he was busy with other kinds of things. Stopped going completely to his other classes while engaged in the alternative curriculum. Well, by December, he had flunked every single class, and he had been disinvited from this university. And he came home and he was kind of bummed, and his mom didn't want him to be too stressed. So they didn't take away his cell phone, didn't take away his lease car, and didn't take away all of his gaming systems. Didn't make him get a job. He settled into living at home, but he didn't have a job and he wasn't really doing anything. Sometimes he would go out at night and not come home, and they really didn't like that. But at least they knew that he was fed and clothed and clean and safe. Well, this went on for a while. Finally, after a few months of this, they got him connected up with a community college, and they signed him up for one class. They signed him up for one class. You hear the difference between, I might say, he signed himself up for a class? No, it wasn't that. They took care of all of the details for him, signed him up for a class, and with mom's help, through the summer, he was able to take that class and pass it because she was there to help him and organize him and do a whole lot of the work for him. And then they hooked him up with another one of those colleges that are willing to take kids for a certain level of tuition. They signed him up for his second college. Off he went in the fall. He said, oh, this is going to work better. This is going to work for me. What do you think he did? They found another college that also happened to have the alternative curriculum available, and he signed up wholeheartedly, and by December he had been disinvited from his second college. Now he's been living home. He still doesn't have a job. He still has the lease car. He still has the cell phone. He still has every toy known to man. They take him on trips. They feed him. They care for him. He's 21 years of age. She turns to me on the airplane and she says, Bob, I'm really worried about him. He just doesn't seem to be motivated. And then she said, Bob, what should I do? Thank you. Here's your job. Find an interesting partner. One of you gets to be me on the airplane. One of you gets to be this mom. You choose your role. Have this conversation. You got 5 minutes. Bob, what should I do? Answer the mom. Find one partner, have that conversation.